All right, so let's get into it one more time. We're gonna talk deadlifts yet again. I've made a whole host of videos, probably 10 or 15 by now on the topic. But one of the things that I wanna touch on with this video specifically is the importance of setup and how that is actually going to dictate your lockout. So a lot of folks, when they're coming to lockout and they're getting up, you'll typically find that folks will fall into one of two camps. The first is that they're very slow off the floor, and they'll barely break the bar off the floor, but then they'll have no problem with lockout. The second camp are those that are very fast off the floor, and then once they get to around mid-shin or knee height, you'll see that tremor start to kick in, and they can't seem to get the hips all the way through at lockout. Now that could be because you're just physically weak in the glutes and the hamstrings, and you lack the hip extensor strength to overcome the weight on the bar. But the other position that I want you to consider is that your setup is actually dictating your inability to lock out. So Kelly Starrett talks about this a lot, and Starrett specifically mentions that the setup will determine the lockout. And here's what I mean. If you're in a deadlift, and let's say you're pulling conventionally, could be sumo as well, given that the positions carry over to lockout similarly. But if you're pulling conventionally, and you set up in a very overextended position or an overly lordotic position, whether you realize it or not, then if we're going to try to get to lockout, so we're in this position here, but we're overarched, and then we try to get to lockout, what's the limiting factor on getting my hips through? It's not my ability to extend my hips, it would be the actual physical positioning of my hips that are taking my glutes and my hamstrings out of position to fire effectively. So one of the most important things that you can remember with any muscle is that position affects activation. For example, if you're just standing and you try to make a big proud chest and arch your back, and then you try to squeeze your glutes, you can do it, but it's a lot more difficult. Similarly, if you exhale a little bit in that position, get your ribs down, and then squeeze your glutes, you're going to find that the hip extension is that much more powerful and coordinated. Same thing in the deadlift. So, now we have to look at, is it acute extension or is it a chronic extension? Acute extension could be from anything from breathing. So if I'm just going to take in a breath all here in my upper chest, I'm sure you see people do that a lot. Or it could be due to chronic extension, in which case we have a lot of overactivity of spinal erectors, the QLs, and because of that, then in our deadlift we can't physically get out of that overextended position into a more neutral or even a flex position, and we don't know how to differentiate between extension, neutral, and flex. So, if you're in that overextended position chronically or acutely, then the answer would be then first to understand what neutral feels like, and then to be able to maintain that new neutral position throughout the duration of the lift. You could use something as simple to teach neutrality. You could use something as simple as a cat-cow drill or a cat-camel drill, however you want to call it. Put somebody on their hands and knees. Say, all right, extend your spine, and then flex your spine. And you can look and see globally, do we have flexion throughout the entirety of the spine? Is it just coming through the thoracic spine? Are they overly kyphotic to the point where they can't extend through that thoracic spine? And all the extensions maybe just through their TL junction, or maybe just through L1 through L5? You can use it as almost an assessment protocol. From there, you would then take somebody and from that quadruped position, you could simply work them into a quadruped rocking position. Can I rock back and maintain a neutral spine? If I can, great. You know that they can squat pain-free, and this is their lowest squat depth. If we then need to transition to a more standing position, or a half kneeling position, or a tall kneeling position, you can work through some of the other drills that I have in my Hacking the Hinge video, and I can link that in the description box below. but that goes through a lot of the regression drills that you can utilize for building a hinge pattern and then incorporating that within your deadlift. So anyways, I hope that was helpful. Just get you thinking about how does my setup and how does the specifics within that determine then my lockout, and is the lockout a strength issue or is it a positioning issue? Or maybe it's a little bit of both. Because you're out of position, you then can't exhibit the strength which you naturally possess because those muscles are now at a disadvantageous position to exert force upon the joint. So just something to keep in the back of your mind, to be more cognizant of your setup and to watch that overextension pattern, whether it be in the deadlift or the squat.